Hi, this is John Hand, and on this episode of Eurocult, we are diving into an abyss of psychosexual tension and Eurocult madness in the 2009 film Amer. Was it Amer or Amer? I don't know. I remember when this film came out. It was characterized as this kind of retro throwback type film, and because I'd made a film called Frankenstein's Bloody Nightmare, I kept running into this film, which was my film itself was also kind of a retro type of throwback type film, I guess you might characterize it as. But Amer, had a much bigger budget than my film, and it had a wonderful poster. And the film, when it came out, was characterized as this kind of tribute to Argento and Bava and a modern celebration of the giallo genre of the 60s and 70s. Those Eurocult, one of the foundations of Eurocult. That genre of film which was given life in Europe. Primarily in Italy, these very weird, strange, psychosexual murder mysteries, which featured graphic violence and beautiful cinematography and beautiful people. Dario Argento was the one of the primary makers of this film, of this type of film. I guess the giallo genre began with Mario Bava's Blood and Black Lace, which was one of the first giallo, and it had this killer with a stocking over his face, this kind of anonymous masked killer with the leather gloves who was murdering young women. And that idea began to be picked up by filmmakers the world over. And Amer has some it's difficult to describe this film. How do I describe it? To me, it's like the, when I started to, hear about Amer, I saw that poster with the naked woman painted upside down with the colors. I didn't like it. And I saw the trailers. I began to see the trailers and the clips online. And I couldn't decide really whether I liked it or not, because I couldn't get an idea of what the story was about, And I'd read these plot synopses, and it's a story of this central journey of this one character, 3 parts. It's her story of her journey and her insane interior monologue throughout these 3 parts of her life as a young girl, and then as an adolescent, and then as an adult. And okay, it's a film about this journey. It's an interior journey inside this one character, like some Robert Altman films, like Images and 3 Women. It's this kind of interior film, but at the same time, it has giallo tropes. It has a lot of Dario Argento, red, green, and blue lighting, and these flashes of this neon blue coloration, and killers with wearing black masks and leather gloves and straight razors across your teeth and stuff like that. But I was watching these trailers, and it's just like, these are just like clips, and it's like, I can't really figure out what these characters are doing, and it has no story, And when I'm finished watching the film. It's about 90 minutes or so, I guess, and I'm still not convinced of what the story exactly was. I mean, I know it's basically as that plot synopsis suggests. It begins with these credits, which are split images, split frames of, and this film is rendered a lot of at times in extreme close-ups, and this film is like a compendium of cinematic tricks. It looks like it was shot in 35 millimeter. It actually looks like it was shot in film, so it's kind of one of the last ones out. And it looks like this film it's like a moving version of a cinematic encyclopedia of tricks. Every trick from as far as lighting, color, lenses, motion, distortions. It's all there, and it's all on display at shot after shot after shot after shot, and I don't know. It becomes kind of tedious because you realize that this is the story that is on display is maybe not as monumental as the cinematic form that it's being told in. Because the story is basically this young girl who's taken by her mother to this mysterious villa in the hills, and there is this hushed corners in this room where perhaps her dead grandfather is at, and she is barred from being in this room, and there is this woman who is wandering about the halls and in black and with this black veil, who may or may not be this young girl's grandmother, and there are all these salt or something below the bed, which may have some kind of cultural resonance that I don't even quite understand. And so this young girl is wandering around this villa, and she has these nightmares, and this part one of the young girl climaxes with her going into her grandfather's area, where she sees this dead, decrepit body of her grandfather, and he's holding this locket or this pocket watch or something in his hand, in his dead, decaying hands, and she claws it out of his dead, decaying hands, and when she opens it up, there's this whooshing sound like something out of Suspiria, and we could have these weird green and blue and red colorations flood the room like this, like it is very reminiscent, particularly of Suspiria and also Inferno. And the old decaying corpse sometimes opens its eyes, and it's just scary as hell. And so she's chased around this villa, and she eventually barricades herself in a room, and by this thing that's chasing her, this veiled woman form, grandmother Visigoth that's chasing her. And eventually she spies her parents having sex, or her mother maybe with her young beau. I don't know if it's really characterized as her father or not. And that really breaks apart her mind and her conception. And so this is the way that the original, the first act, I guess you would say, ends. The second act is the woman. She is now she is an adolescent. We're not sure of specific age, perhaps in the 14 to 15 age, and she goes with her mother. She walks down the hill into town, where her mother goes to the hairdresser, and she kind of wanders around and shares these very strange glances with this younger boy who's playing with a soccer ball, and he tries to kiss her, and then she wanders off and gets within range of this group of young motorcycle thugs in this sequence, which looks more like some kind of French. It looks more like some kind of French television commercial or something. It looks the cinematography in this film, which I say is a compendium of tricks, of distortions, of reflections. I don't harp over, form over substance. To me, the form can be the substance, and in most films, I would champion style, over substance. To me, the medium is the message. To me, the style is the message of the piece. And a film like, like the work of Ridley Scott, something like people will say it's stylish crap, and it doesn't make any sense. To me, if you look at a film which has been characterized as over-stylized and ridiculous upon its release, a film like Blade Runner, to me that film is... you couldn't make that film without that kind of style, You couldn't make Blade Runner with 4 guys in a deserted apartment building, It has to have those sets, and it has to have that cinematography, and it has to have that kind of form, because the form of this world and the way it's shot and the way it's rendered informs the state of the characters, and it informs the story of what it means to be human, and where we're going as a human race, So to me, when people have said, maybe continue to say that Blade Runner is just some kind of punk, ridiculous thing, has no form, has no story, it's just ridiculous. Of course it has a story. Of course it has a point. Of course it has a message, Maybe it's not staring you in the face, but maybe it is. Maybe the whole style, maybe the whole form of the film. So I'm not, I don't, and whenever I do things, I want to be real stylish, but with Amer, it just got way too much, it just got like, it lost sight of this story of this woman, So I don't even remember how that second part ends. It's just this one long scene of this, what amounts to this two women walking down the hill, and then they walk back up, and then it's like a Bella Tarr film to me. This film to me is like the last year at Marienbad of giallo. This is the last year at Marienbad of giallo. This is what these filmmakers have made. They have made what I'm saying is the last year at Marienbad was characterized as this kind of artsy film, which everybody took from what was it? On Her Majesty's Secret Service. The first sequence of that film was Or With Russia Love. Whatever, the first sequence of that film was like rendered after, modeled after last year at Marienbad, and everybody's really professes their love and attention toward last year at Marienbad, but everybody also recognizes that it's a hell of a pretentious film, and it's difficult to kind of decode the meaning of that film, if there is such a meaning. Amer is kind of like that for the giallo genre, though. So... Okay, so we leave this older woman, Anna. Her name is Anna. I'm 12 minutes into the review when I'm telling you or giving you the character's name, Anna. I should also say it's a French film as well, but I guess it makes sense if you're doing a review of Amer or Amer. You don't even know what the pronunciation of it is, to just give away things at random points. There's no, we don't need any kind of pretense of linearity, or we don't need any sense of linear stuff in this type of film. So this is wonderful. I'm not going to edit all this out. So I hope I'm not embarrassing myself, but this is, so, so Act 2 ends with Anna, an older Anna, being slapped by her mother, and they walk back home. And so Act 3 is a much older Anna, who is in this, we find her in this train station. She is being rubbed against by all these other people, these other men, and she finds herself off the train station, and she's actually on the way back to this French villa. And the Anna, she takes a drive in a taxi with this taxi driver who wears black riding gloves, and he has this very mysterious figure, and she goes into this villa, which by now has been deserted, obviously, many years. The insects have grown up, and she opens the gates, and she spends this very weird night in this villa, where she She has this weird situation where she feels that someone is following her, is chasing after her, and she has this bath where there's this she has this romantic moment with herself with a comb where it goes up and down. And we hear the sound of the comb, and eventually this taxi driver comes back to the villa, presumably for some kind of sexual interlude with Anna, an older Anna, and the black glove killer murders the taxi driver, as well as chases Anna around. After chasing Anna around, murders the taxi driver. Anna wakes up in a daze. She realizes she's wearing the black gloves of the killer. So did she do it at the same, before we can even process that? Anna looks up and she sees, just like in Blood and Black Lace or in Torso or any of the films which this movie is ripped off the soundtrack from, we see this black form, silhouette of the killer, this big, rough-looking fellow staring down at Anna, and she chases, the black killer chases Anna out onto the bluffs and onto a cliff. Well, we're not sure at that point. It seems like at one point Anna is chasing this black form killer, and at another point the killer is chasing her. But meanwhile, they find themselves at the cliff, and Anna stabs him, and what pours out but water. Then we slam into a scene where we see Anna on what we perceive to be in a mortician's room, in a morgue, where she's being turned over and her lips are painted. Suddenly, the last shot in the film is her pale face somehow begins to come to life again. Her cheeks begin to become fleshy and rosy again. And just as just as the credits roll, we see her eyes barely begin to open. Then we slam to the title. So that is Amer, or Amer, a French film, Canal Plus, made by Belgians, a husband and wife team, Hélène Cattet and Bruno Forzani. As I was saying earlier, to me, it's like the last Marion Bad of giallo films. It feels like it's a compendium of every kind of cinematic trick in the book. But I don't know. You know, I guess it's not one of those films that kind of interests me. I think the film is worth seeing. I think it's absolutely worth seeing on Blu-ray, where I saw it. It was just recently re-released on Blu-ray by Olive Films, a United States company. Releases a lot of Paramount films, and also released the Hellstrom Chronicle. But they've done a wonderful job with the Blu-ray of this film. But I don't know. I haven't really read many of the reviews, critiques. I haven't really read many of the interviews with the filmmakers, which usually I'm so interested in doing. I think from a technical perspective, there's a lot of fascinating elements to this film. I think what I came away with this film, what I came from this film with is that what struck me most, the film had a very well-defined sexual politic. The film clearly had a sexual politic which was very feminine, very feminist, and it was kind of the central journey of this woman from her sexual awakening as a child to her adolescence and this growing up in this town to the end, where this sexual tension has become twisted inside her into a kind of form of madness. And of course, this film really is using the giallo kind of form in order to tell this very kind of personal story of this woman, which is very, as I say, kind of Altman-esque, very much like Altman's weirdo film that he made himself, Images, or Three Women. So it's kind of like that. So maybe if I was a crazy French woman, I might be able to get more into this film. But given that I'm not, it's a little bit of a distancing factor for me, you know? The soundtrack is great. The soundtrack is just basically, I don't think it's any original music. If it's any original music, it's very, very little. It's mostly Bruno Nicolai, Stelvio Cipriani, and Ennio Morricone. There's a lot of tracks you'll recognize Stelvio Cipriani from various things he's done, various things from here, various things over there. And one track, which I believe was a Cipriani or a Morricone track, I believe it was Morricone, was the track as she's entering this the deserted French villa, which is, as I said, been crowded around by weeds and trees have just been kind of growing in. It's all decrepit, hasn't been kept up for years. Obviously, the original owners of it have long since passed away, gone on. There's this music track, which, as I said, I believe is Morricone. It's the same track that Damon Packard starts his film Reflections of Evil with. And I started listening to this track, and it's very weird. It's become this kind of weird meta thing where originally this track has been used in this 2009 film Amer, but it was also used by Damon Packard in what was his 2005, 2006 film Reflections of Evil. It was also used in a Morricone film originally, so most people are kind of referencing the Morricone film. I'm referencing the Damon Packard film, so I'm kind of like in between, in a twilight zone of understanding these references. You know, it's just like the recent film The Artist, which at the end used a Bernard Herrmann cut from Vertigo, and everybody was like, oh, he was Vertigo, you know. And, you know, but music is a really fluid thing, and what's Ennio Morricone track made specifically for this film one day is a library track the next day, you know. So I made a little quip about them stealing the music earlier, but again, you know, I have no shame in it, and in some ways, I think the music, the use of vintage Eurocult music cuts in Amer is in some ways far more defined and far more appropriate and far more delicate and well done than in, say, most of the Tarantino films of late, like Inglourious Basterds or Kill Bill, where he's been using little cuts of Euro score. There's a lot of obscure visual themes in this film, which I haven't quite been able to decode. The water, which is the theme of power and sexuality in this film, which seems to envelop the lead character at many times. The theme of the insect, of biting, of penetration, somehow a confluence of life and death, of penetration, penetration angst, penetration being confused with violence, with the slicing of the razor and the playing with of the wounds. And there's a lot of uncomfortable moments in this film, and little crevices of ideas and archaic thought, which make the film to a great extent rewarding. But to me, it feels like there's something missing. It feels like that plot, that big explanation, that Thomas the Explainer scene where it pulls it all together and gives you that kind of feeling is kind of missing, you know? It's got to be a right Thomas the Explainer scene. It can't be a sucky one, you know. But it should have been there, and I don't know. It's just, to me, I leave this film feeling it's like 5 minutes away from brilliance, you know. It's like almost that short of just utter brilliance, you know. So Amer, a fun film for your friends. I definitely would suggest checking it out on Blu-ray. I guess that's it. Kind of painless. Have a great day.